My friends, when we speak of addiction, we are not merely speaking of substances, of alcohol, or of narcotics. There is a more subtle, far more insidious drug that dwells not in the vial, nor in the pipe, nor in the glass. It dwells within the psyche itself. It is invisible, yet it intoxicates. It is intangible, yet it binds. This mental drug is the projection of desire upon an object of fascination. It is the unconscious spell a man casts upon another person, an idea or an illusion, believing that without it he is nothing. Addiction in the soul begins when man mistakes what lies outside for what he longs for within. He believes that the woman he chases, the approval he seeks, the wealth he covets, will heal his inner fragmentation. But what he does not realize is that his hunger is not for her, nor for gold, nor for applause. His hunger is for wholeness. The external object is but the vessel into which he pours his unconscious yearning. And this yearning, this projection, is the drug. When a man first encounters this object of desire, it is as though lightning has struck. He feels alive. His heart races, his mind obsesses, his spirit clings. He is convinced he has discovered meaning. But meaning that rests entirely in the external is unstable, and the more he consumes, the emptier he becomes. Just as the addict requires ever more of the substance to feel the same thrill, so too does the soul require greater doses of the illusion. This is why so many men cannot stop checking the phone for her message, cannot release the thought of her gaze, cannot live without that intoxicating fix of validation. But here we must speak clearly. The drug is not the woman, not the applause, not the dream. The drug is the man's own unconscious shadow, his longing for union with the lost part of himself. The beloved becomes the carrier of his Anima, the inner feminine soul, image that he has not yet integrated. The applause becomes the mirror of his unrecognized worth. The dream of success becomes the disguise for his fear of inadequacy. And as long as he does not recognize this, he remains enslaved to the mental narcotic. Observe the man in love who cannot eat, who cannot sleep, who cannot think of anything but her. He is intoxicated, not by the woman herself, but by what she represents to his unconscious mind, the key to his completeness. Observe the man who chases wealth with desperation. He is not merely greedy. He is attempting to silence the inner cry of poverty in his soul. Observe the man who becomes addicted to status, recognition, power. These are his substances. His spirit is addicted not to things, but to meaning, to symbols. The unconscious is clever. It disguises this projection in such a way that the man believes he is free. He tells himself, I love her, I want her, I need her. He tells himself, if only I had enough money I would be secure. But Jung warns us, when something is unconscious, it controls you, and you call it fate. The addicted man is not free, he is possessed. His soul has been hijacked by an archetype, and the drug is his illusion of fulfillment through the external world. The withdrawal of this drug is painful. When the object of fascination disappears, when the woman leaves, when the applause fades, when the dream collapses, the man suffers as though deprived of oxygen. He feels empty, abandoned, even destroyed. But here lies the crucial turning point in this suffering. He has a chance. For in the darkness of withdrawal, the psyche whispers, what you sought outside has always lived within. The task is not to destroy the drug, nor to despise the external world, but to recognize the projection for what it is, a mirror of the soul. The true cure for this addiction is integration. The man must draw back the anima, embrace the shadow, confront the hunger in his own depths. Only then does he discover that the intoxication he sought in another has its roots in his own being. The mental drug that makes a man addicted is nothing other than his refusal to meet his own soul face to face. It is easier to pursue the illusion outside than to endure the terror of the inner abyss. But the man who dares to enter the abyss, who dares to withdraw his projections, will find that what once enslaved him now becomes his source of strength. For true freedom is not the absence of desire, it is the recognition of desire's source. And once a man realizes that the intoxicating drug he seeks is the forgotten wholeness of his own psyche, he will no longer be addicted. He will be awakened. The projection of desire as the invisible drug begins the moment a man mistakes what is within him for something that exists entirely outside of him. When Jung speaks of projection, he is not merely describing a casual psychological process, but a profound and dangerous act of the psyche that creates both enchantment and bondage. Desire, when unrecognized, seeks an object to latch onto, and once it finds such an object, it projects upon it the power of salvation. The man believes that this person, this possession, this circumstance is the very key to his fulfillment, his peace, his happiness. In truth, what he is experiencing is not the object as it is, but the invisible drug of his own unconscious longing mirrored back at him. This is why his attachment becomes addictive. He does not relate to reality, but to the fantasy that his own psyche has woven around reality. Imagine the man who encounters a woman and suddenly feels overwhelmed by fascination. He cannot stop thinking of her, he idealizes her, he imagines that life without her would be barren. He believes that she holds the key to his sense of completeness. Yet what he is experiencing is not her true self, but the projection of his inner anima, the forgotten feminine side of his psyche, which now lives in her image. She becomes a goddess, a savior, a muse, but in truth she is an ordinary person carrying the weight of his unconscious expectations. The intoxication he feels is the drug of projection, a drug far more powerful than any chemical, for it grips not the body but the soul. He wakes in the night thinking of her. He checks his phone endlessly for her messages. He imagines future scenarios, and he becomes restless in her absence. This is not love in its mature form. This is addiction to the illusion of wholeness that he has projected outward. The projection of desire extends far beyond relationships. Consider the man who believes that money will finally free him. He pours all his energy into acquiring wealth, driven not merely by ambition, but by a deep inner hunger. Each coin, each transaction, each number on the bank statement becomes a symbol of survival, safety, and worth. The more he acquires, the more he feels compelled to acquire, for the satisfaction never lasts. Like the addict who requires a stronger dose, he must raise the stakes again and again, seeking the next financial achievement, the next external validation of his value. He does not realize that the drug is not the money itself, but the unconscious belief that his worth is measured by possession. He is intoxicated by the projection of his own insecurity, disguised as the pursuit of wealth. Status and recognition function in the same way. The man who hungers for applause, who craves to be seen, who cannot rest unless others affirm him, is addicted not to the crowd, but to the drug of projection. The clapping hands, the approving nods, the words of admiration, all of these become intoxicating substances to him. Yet what they mask is his own inability to affirm himself. The unconscious shadow whispers that he is insignificant, and to silence this whisper, he chases the external mirror that reflects him back as important. Each moment of applause feels like a high, but soon it fades, and he requires more. The cycle is endless because he is addicted not to reality, but to the projected illusion of being whole through others. The danger of this invisible drug is that it convinces the man that he is free while enslaving him more deeply with every breath. He tells himself he loves, that he is ambitious, that he is simply passionate, when in truth he is shackled by the fantasies of his unconscious. Jung warns us that whatever remains unconscious rules us, and we call it destiny. The man under projection believes he has chosen freely, but in reality, he has been chosen by his own unacknowledged desires, compelled by them, blinded by them, enslaved by them. He believes he is pursuing love, wealth, recognition, or success, but he is actually being pursued by his own inner emptiness, disguised in alluring form. The addictiveness of projection lies in its ability to promise what it cannot deliver. The drug convinces the man that if only he possesses the object of his desire, he will at last feel whole. But the moment he gains it, the satisfaction dissipates, for no external object can carry the burden of an eternal longing. The woman cannot embody his entire anima, money cannot embody infinite security, applause cannot embody unconditional worth. Reality cracks under the weight of projection, and the man is left restless, searching again for another object to project upon. In this way, life becomes a series of highs and lows, cycles of infatuation and disillusionment, never ending because the drug never satisfies. Projection also creates distortion. The man under its influence does not see the world as it is. He sees the world as his unconscious demands it to be. He ignores flaws, exaggerates virtues, and idealizes situations. He believes he is perceiving truth, but he is perceiving only the reflection of his inner state. This distortion deepens his addiction, for the more he believes in the illusion, the more he depends upon it, and the more devastated he feels when reality eventually intrudes. The collapse of projection is like the withdrawal of a drug. It is painful, it feels like death. It shatters his inner world. Yet this collapse also contains the seed of transformation, if he dares to confront what lies beneath the illusion. The invisible drug of projection is powerful because it thrives on what is unacknowledged. A man who has not confronted his own longing for wholeness, his fear of insignificance, his unintegrated anima or shadow, is most vulnerable to it. The drug finds fertile ground in the unconscious, where it can grow unchecked, feeding on denial, on fantasy, on unmet needs. It provides escape from the inner abyss, a temporary distraction from the haunting emptiness. But in providing escape, it also robs the man of freedom. He lives not as himself, but as the addict of his own illusions, bound to the cycle of desire and disappointment. To understand projection as a drug is to recognize its intoxicating nature, its ability to enslave, and its power to distort. Unlike external substances, this drug arises from within, making it harder to recognize and harder to resist. It is invisible because it disguises itself as love, ambition, or passion. And it is addictive because it promises fulfillment while ensuring its absence. The man who falls under its influence is both the dealer and the user, creating his own illusions and consuming them as though they were reality, unaware that he is poisoning his own soul. The anima and the illusion of wholeness emerge as one of the most captivating yet dangerous forces in a man's psychological life. For here lies the source of much of his longing, his projections, and his addictions. Jung described the anima as the inner feminine aspect of the male psyche, a living archetype that holds within it qualities of emotion, intuition, creativity, tenderness, depth, and connection to the unconscious. Yet for most men, the anima remains buried, unknown, unintegrated, and therefore she does not appear to them as a part of themselves, but instead is projected outward onto women. This is the beginning of a powerful illusion, for when the man encounters a woman who awakens this inner figure, he believes she is the very source of his wholeness, the one who will complete him, the missing half of his being. He does not see her as she is, he sees her as his own unconscious soul, image clothed in human form. The intoxicating rush that floods him is not simply attraction, but the overwhelming sense of reunion with what he has lost. And this is why the anima functions as a mental drug. When a man has not met his anima within, every woman who resonates with her energy becomes a potential carrier of this projection. Suddenly, she is no longer a mere human being, but a goddess, a savior, a muse, the living embodiment of all that he has repressed or yearned for. He is mesmerized, intoxicated, filled with longing and obsession, unable to separate his inner world from the outer reality. The illusion of wholeness begins to dominate his psyche. He tells himself he has fallen in love. But what he has fallen into is the archetypal abyss of his own anima. His feelings are not only for the woman, but for the lost part of himself that she represents. The drug here is the fantasy of completion, the dream that through her he will become whole, that through her he will silence the ache of incompleteness within. This illusion is powerful because it draws on the deepest wound of the psyche, the experience of separation. Man feels divided, incomplete, torn between his conscious masculine persona and the unconscious feminine within. Instead of facing this inner divide, he projects the solution outward. He believes the woman will heal it. This belief creates the condition of addiction. The thought of losing her becomes unbearable, for to lose her is to lose the illusion of being whole again. He clings, he obsesses, he sacrifices his own center, convinced that she is the axis of his existence. But this is not love in its mature sense. It is enslavement to the anima projection, a dependence on the external to carry what must ultimately be integrated within. The anima intoxication is often mistaken for destiny. The man says, "I have found my soulmate, I cannot live without her. This is fate." Yet in truth what he has found is his own unconscious mirrored back. The intensity of his feelings is real, but their source is not her individuality, but the archetype she has awakened in him. This is why such relationships can burn with a blinding fire at first, and then collapse into ashes once reality asserts itself. No woman can eternally embody an archetype. She is human with her own flaws, needs, and contradictions. When the projection shatters, the man feels betrayed, disillusioned, even heartbroken, as though robbed of a divine vision. The withdrawal is agonizing because he is not simply losing her. He is losing the illusion of completeness that she carried for him. The drug is stripped away, and he feels once more the raw emptiness of his own unintegrated soul. The anima also tempts men into creative intoxication. Many poets, artists, and musicians have sung not of real women, but of anima figures, idealized muses who served as vessels for their unconscious longing. The inspiration feels divine, the creativity endless, the passion overwhelming, yet behind it lies the same drug of projection. The artist believes his muse gives him his gift, but in truth she is the inner anima stirring from within. Without realizing it, he has externalized his inner creativity, placing it upon an imagined or real figure, and so he becomes dependent. If she disappears, so does his inspiration, and he believes he is lost. The drug works not only in love but in art, in spirituality, in every area where the anima archetype can be projected outward. The illusion of wholeness is seductive because it promises to resolve what the conscious ego cannot resolve on its own. Wholeness is the aim of individuation, the lifelong process of uniting the conscious and unconscious, masculine and feminine, light and shadow. But this path requires courage, self-examination, confrontation with inner wounds, and the slow work of integration. Projection offers a shortcut, the fantasy that another person can deliver wholeness instantly. This is why it feels like a drug, for the high is immediate and overwhelming. Yet as with any drug, the crash is inevitable, for what was sought outside cannot permanently satisfy what lies within. The hunger of the soul cannot be filled by another person's presence. It can only be met through the encounter with one's own depths. Jung warned that when the anima is not integrated, she possesses the man. She leads him into obsessions, into destructive choices, into the endless cycle of infatuation and disappointment. She whispers promises of salvation that turn into despair when reality intrudes. The man under her spell loses his grounding, neglects his responsibilities, abandons his reason, convinced that his salvation lies in her. He becomes like an addict who needs the next fix, desperate for the reassurance that the illusion of wholeness still holds. His life becomes governed by this hunger, and he does not see that what he truly longs for is not her, but his own inner completion. Yet the anima is not an enemy. She is a guide, a bridge to the unconscious, a source of creativity, emotion, and wisdom. The danger lies not in her existence, but in her projection. When she is recognized as an inner figure, when the man withdraws her from the external and acknowledges her within himself, the addiction begins to dissolve. He no longer needs to cling to another for the illusion of completeness, for he begins to taste true integration. The anima then ceases to be a drug and becomes a source of depth and transformation. She enriches his inner life rather than enslaving his outer life. The illusion of wholeness through the anima is one of the greatest traps of the psyche, but also one of its greatest teachers. For in suffering the addiction, in experiencing the highs and lows of projection, the man is eventually driven to question its source. The pain of loss, the disillusionment of broken projections, the despair of withdrawal, these can become the doorway to insight. He may come to see that what he sought in her was always a reflection of his own soul. He may recognize that the wholeness he craves is not bestowed from without, but cultivated within through the process of individuation. And when he begins to walk this path, the anima no longer appears as a drug, but as a guide leading him toward his deeper self. Addiction to symbols such as love, power, and recognition reveals the way the unconscious mind transforms intangible needs into visible pursuits, and it is here that one can see the human psyche bound to the same cycles as chemical dependence. A man may never drink, may never smoke, may never inject anything into his veins, but he can live intoxicated all the same, addicted to the mental drug of symbols, to the illusions that he mistakes for necessities. Jung taught that the psyche speaks in symbols, that what appears outwardly as a pursuit of love, money, authority, or reputation is often an image of something hidden beneath. What is hidden is the deep longing of the soul for meaning, for affirmation, for wholeness. When the man fails to recognize this longing within, he attaches it to external forms, convincing himself that only through them will he find what he seeks. Thus love becomes not just affection, but the promise of salvation. Power becomes not just influence, but the assurance of safety. Recognition becomes not just approval, but the illusion of immortality. Each of these becomes a drug because the psyche pours into them more energy than they can contain, turning them into addictive substances that can never fully satisfy. Love, in its symbolic form, becomes one of the most intoxicating addictions. A man under this spell does not simply love another person as she is, with her flaws and her humanity. Rather, he clings to her as though she were the container of his entire existence. Her presence is a narcotic, her attention a dose, her absence a withdrawal that shakes him to his core. He believes he is in love, but often what he is experiencing is attachment to the symbol of love, the fantasy of being chosen, desired, and completed. Each smile, each message, each moment together delivers a rush, but like any rush, it fades, and he longs for another. The cycle of craving, satisfaction, and emptiness becomes relentless, and the relationship becomes less about connection than about the desperate need to feed the hunger of the soul. The symbol of love has become an addictive drug, concealing the deeper truth that the man has not yet loved himself fully, nor integrated the fragmented parts of his being. Power, too, functions as a drug of the psyche. The pursuit of authority, dominance, or control is rarely about the external situation alone. A man addicted to power is not driven solely by ambition or the need to lead. He is driven by the unconscious terror of helplessness, insignificance, or vulnerability. The throne, the title, the position, these become symbols that mask the inner wound. With each achievement, he feels a rush of certainty, as though the fear within has been silenced. But soon the silence breaks, and he must climb higher, control more, dominate further. He becomes intoxicated with the pursuit of influence, unable to rest, unable to stop, because what he is chasing is not the external authority itself, but the inner illusion of invulnerability. Just as the addict increases his dosage, so too does the man of power expand his reach, needing ever more to sustain the illusion. The drug is not the crown or the office, but the belief that through them he will silence the trembling shadow within. Recognition is perhaps the most subtle of these symbolic drugs, for it hides beneath the most ordinary human desire. To be seen, to be valued, to be acknowledged. Yet when recognition becomes an addiction, the man is no longer free. Every action, every word, every accomplishment is done with one eye fixed on the response of others. Applause becomes his intoxication, praise his elixir, admiration his stimulant. He waits for the nods, the compliments, the affirmations, for each one delivers the chemical rush of being momentarily complete. But like all drugs, the effect wears off, leaving him restless, insecure, and hungry for more. Without recognition, he feels invisible. Without praise, he feels worthless. He becomes enslaved to the eyes of others, living not from his own soul, but from the reflections he receives. Jung understood that the ego craves affirmation, but when this craving becomes absolute, the man loses contact with his deeper self, trapped in the endless cycle of needing others to tell him who he is. What makes love, power, and recognition such dangerous addictions is their symbolic nature. They are not inherently destructive, for all three are natural aspects of life. To love and be loved, to wield influence responsibly, to be recognized for one's contributions. These are all healthy desires. The destruction comes when they cease to be realities and become symbols carrying the weight of unconscious projections. The man does not love a woman for herself. He loves her as the image of his lost wholeness. He does not seek power to serve. He seeks it to silence the terror of insignificance. He does not accept recognition with gratitude. He chases it to mask the emptiness of his soul. In each case, the symbol has become overloaded, distorted, turned into a drug that the psyche consumes obsessively. The cycle of addiction to these symbols mirrors the cycle of chemical dependence. There is the anticipation, the craving, the pursuit. Then comes the high, the moment of intimacy, the victory of dominance, the applause of the crowd. This is followed by the inevitable decline, the fading of intensity, the return of hunger. And so the cycle repeats, each time more urgent, each time more consuming, because the satisfaction never reaches the depth of the original need. The unconscious drives the man forward, promising that the next dose will finally be enough. But it never is, for the true hunger is not for the external symbol, but for the internal integration of the soul. This addiction is reinforced by society itself, which glorifies these symbols and rewards those who pursue them. Men are praised for their conquests in love, admired for their accumulation of power, celebrated for their recognition. The culture hands them the drug and tells them it is success. Yet beneath the surface, many feel hollow, restless, unable to stop, because they are not being nourished by truth but by illusion. Jung would remind us that what society calls success may often be the mask of the unconscious, and what looks like achievement may actually be enslavement. The withdrawal from these symbolic drugs is painful. To lose the woman upon whom one has projected love feels like death. To lose power feels like collapse. To be ignored or forgotten feels like annihilation. The suffering is immense because the man believes he has lost the very thing that made him whole. Yet this suffering can also open the door to transformation. For in the emptiness of withdrawal, he may begin to realize that what he sought in love, power, or recognition was always a reflection of his own inner need. He may come to see that the drug never satisfied because it was never meant to. The true task is not to eliminate love, power, or recognition, but to withdraw the projections, to see them clearly, to relate to them without addiction. Symbols are not enemies, they are guides. Love points toward the integration of the anima, power toward the strength of the self, recognition toward the affirmation of one's true being. But when they are mistaken for the source of wholeness rather than signs pointing to it, they enslave. The work of individuation calls the man to take back these projections, to recognize that what he seeks in another is what he must discover in himself, to realize that the true intoxication he longs for is union with his own soul. Only then does the cycle of addiction dissolve, for the drug loses its hold once the illusion is seen for what it is.